So, welcome to Sardinia. This is an exclusive ride on Aprilia's new Tuareg. Normally, I run outside the hotel and I get a picture of all the bikes perfectly lined up, and I kind of do an intro like everybody else does. But I didn't get a chance this morning because we wanted to hit the road quickly because the sun was perfect, the conditions were perfect, and as you can tell from behind me, it looks like it's going to rain. So let me give you a little intro to the new Tuareg. First adventure bike from Aprilia for quite some time, but it was pretty obvious they were going to do this when they launched the sporty RS 660, because this little parallel twin 660 engine was screaming out to go in an adventure bike. Might even go in something like a supermoto as well, who knows. But anyway, let's focus on the Tuareg. The engine is from the RS 660, but it's completely different. They've changed the cams, they've changed the intakes, they've changed the airbox, they've changed the exhaust. So different power, different torque to the RS 660. Much more torque, lower down, not as revvy. Chassis is obviously unique to this model. Fully adjustable forks, fully adjustable rear shock, plenty of travel, 21-inch front wheel. This bike is designed to go off-road and go smashing straight against Yamaha's Tenere. In terms of technology, it's above the Tenere because we've got multiple rider modes. A specific off-road mode, we've got changeable traction control, changeable ABS, engine brake and power characteristics within the modes. So each mode makes maximum power, but it just softens the fuel delivery, for example when you're in urban mode. So you've got the different modes: explore, urban, off-road and individual. Then within that you've got your average speed, your fuel, traction, trip, time, max speed, etc. Then further in you've got your riding modes, so you can go into each individual riding mode and change the settings. So you've got engine brake, traction control, ABS and engine management. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. When you go into the off-road, you've got rear ABS and traction control is disabled, and then in the individual I've disabled the traction control. So whilst riding along I can be in urban, and if I should choose to I can click into off-road, or I can click into individual, which will turn off the traction on the rear and the ABS on the rear, and that can all be done on the move with a closed throttle. Pretty simple and straightforward. This is the switch gear on the left hand side. This is your to turn the TC up and down. So if I go into, I'll just show you that. So that's going TC up and down. And if I go across, this also activates the cruise control. And the modes are done underneath there, underneath the start mode. So that is for your modes. Pretty straightforward, really. Huge range of accessories on these bikes. These are completely standard, so the handguards, the crash protection is standard. The optional quick shifter up and down is an optional extra on these bikes, but in the catalogues there's a huge amount of stuff you can add to this bike for off-road riding and panniers and bigger screen, etc. We've just stopped here at lunch. We've done a little bit of off-road, probably about 30 kilometers of off-road, a bit of beach section, which was pretty hard work. It's not out of its comfort zone riding off-road. It's pretty impressive actually. When you flick to the off-road mode, it deactivates the ABS on the rear, so you've still got ABS on the front, and it deactivates the TC, so you can slide it around on the traction control. It's interesting because I thought this bike was going to be a lot sportier than it is, and it's not. It's quite user-friendly. The suspension is soft, but it's progressively soft, so it doesn't just dive into the corners and when you jump heavy on the brakes. And the brakes kind of are impressive, but they're very user-friendly. Usually when you get on an Aprilia, it's got massive Brembos that are eye-poppingly good. These are Brembos, but they're progressive, almost soft. So the control, so when you brake heavy, the forks progressively dive in a controlled manner. They don't just plummet to the ground. So as I say, this is only lunch stop. I'll give you an update later. I'll give you a bit of a verdict. Just go enjoy a bit of pasta now. See you in a bit. So, just coming towards the end of the test. Bit damp, bit muddy, but we got to test the new Aprilia Tuareg in all conditions. We did off-road, on-road, open roads, mud, water, rivers, everything. All in all, pretty impressive. Let me tell you why. Well, first off, the engine. If you was to ride it blindfold, which would be dangerous, but imagine you could, I doubt you'd guess it was a 60. You'd think it was 750, 850, or maybe a 900. Really impressive power from this little 660 engine. Got much more torque, and peak power is lower in the RPM, as is the torque, than the RS 660. So it's really forgiving, really easy to ride, but it feels a lot bigger. It doesn't feel like a entry level or a small bike. It feels like a proper big bike with plenty of power. In terms of chassis, you've obviously got a 21-inch front wheel, you've got long travel, multiple adjustable suspension, so you've got to make compensations for that. But Aprilia have done that very, very well. So when you brush the brakes, the forks don't dive and plummet trying to find fossils. They're controlled and they dive progressively, and when they come back on the rebound, it's the same. It's nice and progressive, nice and fluid. Obviously it's not razor sharp because you're turning such a big front wheel, but considering its off-road dynamics and its off-road capabilities, it's impressive on-road. What sets this model above some of the competition is the TFT screen, the 4 rider modes, the ease of use of the screen, the ease of use of the rider modes. You can flick from individual to off-road to urban. You can change the traction on the move, you can switch off the ABS on the rear, you can spin the rear off-road just by changing the modes. It's really simple, intuitive and easy to do. It's not that big of a bike. I'm 5'7", or 172 centimeters, I think that is. And yeah, I can touch the floor. It doesn't feel overpowering, it doesn't feel intimidating. The weight is nice and balanced. This is not a giant adventure bike that you're going to be intimidated by. The grip from the Pirellis is impressive. We've had real mixed conditions today, and I turned up the traction quite a bit, and as confidence built, I reduced the traction. And really impressive grip from the Pirellis, both off-road and in the wet and in the dry. They're a really good all-round tyre. When we're chatting about the rider modes, I deliberately put the rider modes as high as they could go and deliberately tried to make the bike spin, and you can feel that traction grab hold of the spinning of the rear, and reintervention of the power is very smooth. The ABS in these really slippery, slimy conditions, you can jump on the brakes and it's not like duh, 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 duh. It's really smooth, really progressive, and again the reintervention is really, really impressive and smooth. If you go down to traction 1, that's more for off-road use, so on the road you want to be on traction 2, because when I tried spinning the rear in traction 1 on the road, it does spin quite a bit and then comes back in line. So just a little word of warning that you want to be on traction 2, not 1. Styling wise, personally, I like it. I put some pictures on my social media, and it's a bit kind of 50-50 at the moment, but personally I quite like it. The screen is a little low, the seat is a little firm because we've been riding all day and I'm starting to feel it a little bit, but that's because it needs to work off-road. The gear position display on the dash is a little small, but now I'm really starting nitpicking, trying to find something about the bike that I don't like. The quick shifter is up and down as an optional extra, maybe that should come as standard, but all in all, pretty impressive bike. As I say, if this was a blind test, you'd never guess that was a 660. So it's a big things up for me because it's the first time, well, it's not the first time, it's a long time since Aprilia have done an adventure bike. I'm pleased that they've done it. It's going to be interesting when we put it against the competition. I think it sits above the Yamaha Tenere, but it sits above it in terms of price, and it's probably closer to Triumph's Tiger. But it goes on sale shortly. Hope you like the review. I am wet, I'm a bit damp, I'm a bit cold, but if you like these reviews, please subscribe and I'll do some more.